Well, big prophet jewel of the day. It's a beautiful day. So I wanted to talk about certainty and dogma. All right. So the way I look at it, there's a few different types of certainty. There's a certainty where you're correct, and it's an absolute, and it's coming from evidence you could show and prove, or it's from experience, like you've done it already, you've been there, and you know what you're talking about. The other kind is relative, and it's coming from somewhere else. It's coming from within. It's more based on emotion. It's how you feel, that kind of certainty. And it's not really a rational thing. We look at certainty like it's a rational process or a logical process, but there's a lot of different things going on which create this idea or this concept or feeling of certainty. So I call I look at it, there's two types, right? For this relative certainty, there's the open-minded certainty and the closed-minded certainty. Right, so let's talk about the open-minded certainty. I think this is the positive kind, when you're open to new information, you're open to things changing, you're not resistant towards any of these changes. You're open to it, and you're open to adjusting and growing. And you don't have to be right. You're more there for the journey of growing and developing and finding the truth. But you're certain that you will find it. Like no matter, it's like a confidence type thing, where it's just like, you'll trust the process. I'm certain this will work itself out, and I'll do whatever I gotta do to get there. Like we gotta approach life with an open-minded certainty, a level of confidence and trust. In ourselves and in the path, in the way of finding this truth or this information or perspective, growth. All right, now let's look at the closed-minded certainty, and I think this is where everything gets fucked up in the world, where people are certain about things they know nothing about. They trust sources without questioning or doing their own research. They are defensive. They're not open to new information. They're not open to growth. They're not open to change. It's like a stubbornness or a hubris. Like I think there's so many problems with it, and it's also like it becomes like a dogmatic thing where it's like, you can't question it, you can't talk about it. That's just the way it is. And it's bizarre, and it's a cultural thing, like this Western society, it's very autocratic, very authoritative. It's like, you do what I say, don't talk, don't ask no questions. That's the boss. That's they're the person with a title. They're the authority figure, and there's no need to question. There's no need to think for yourself. This is the answer. Just write down what I say, type thing. Like this is this closed-minded certainty, and that we're perpetuating. And it's like we look at dogma as like it's a religious thing, but dogma is the culture, is Western culture. Like it's permeates everything. It's everywhere. We could be mad at religion, but we should be mad at everything else that does that shit too. This dogmatic, closed-minded certainty. Like we're not even able to discuss certain topics. And people are afraid to ask questions about shit just because there's a pecking order for everything. and people don't even develop skills of having a conversation. So people have these emotional breakdowns when their little bubble gets burst about like something they don't even know. So you got people, and I want to bring up this other topic about the Dunning-Kruger effect. I don't know if I brought it up in a previous jewel, but the Dunning-Kruger, in a nutshell, is basically when you start to learn something, you overestimate your understanding. But when you really develop a better understanding, then you realize you know nothing, and then you go, it's kind of like it's a curves. Like you start to learn and you're all the way up here, your confidence is way too high. You think you know everything, and you think you know more than others that are actually more educated than you are. And then you really start to learn more, and then you realize you know nothing, and then it goes down. And it builds back up after a while. But you get humbled because you need to. But this is like a natural process of learning, unless we go in humble, unless we start thinking humble, but we'll still probably overestimate our understanding. But this is what I see a lot of people go through unconsciously when they learn about something. They like watch a YouTube video, they think there's some authority on the concept or on the topic. Then they start, their ego gets in the way, and then they start debating somebody that's actually knows what they're talking about, that actually has done the research or has experienced it even, and they got the audacity to talk down to them because they watched a half of a video or read a couple of articles on the shit, but they ain't got nothing substantial to back it up. So then they have this mental breakdown, emotional breakdown. Like I've seen this so much, and it's insane. You know, but we have this situation because we developed a culture of this dogmatic, closed-minded certainties. So then this Dunning-Kruger effect is going to an extreme where people are satisfied with a surface level of understanding instead of really doing research or even developing a skill of having a conversation about it, coming from a place of learning as a student. Instead, they want to be the teacher. They want to jump from like not knowing shit to teaching other people and not even knowing shit. You know, like just this concept. I spent months learning about this concept, and I'm not no authority on the shit. I gotta always look at myself as a student. I'm not a teacher. I'm a student, and the better student I am, the better I can share. But I also realized that this should be more of a collaborative venture. You know, like I need to collaborate with people because that's the most important thing, is understanding, having a better understanding of these concepts. And I love to have conversations with people that'll challenge my ideas so I can have a better idea afterwards. And that's what it should be about. We should be trading ideas and steel sharpens steel, you know? And it's so rare. It's so rare. And it can't have these conversations. When someone gets their idea challenged, they get emotional about it. You know? So it's like, it's very rare. There's very few people I can have these conversations with about an idea, and we could challenge one another and come up with a better understanding afterwards. You know, it's very rare, and it's a cultural thing because this is a society where it's all about a superiority complex, and people want to be the guy. They want to be that person. They want to be the boss. They want to be the teacher. They want to be the leader. but nobody's ready to follow. Nobody's ready to do the work. And that's it. They're not ready to be uncomfortable. They can't stand being uncomfortable, and they got such thin skin that they can't even have a conversation, yo. And this is a cultural thing. I keep saying this. We have a society that we're groomed to not be able to communicate without getting too emotional about some shit that we don't even know. Like I see this white guy white-splaining to a black brother about colonization, and he's going off. He's getting so emotional and so angry, and all he's exposing is how much or how little his understanding of this thing, and he's disintegrating all these different parts and not acknowledging how they all play a role together, like how it comes together, like they factor together. You keep trying to separate things and act like you understand how it works. Like, no, it's all connected. It's all connected. They perpetuate one another. You know, if you understand it, you'll see how they're connected. But no, you don't, and you're getting emotional about the shit. Same with this other. I seen this girl crying in this. I guess it was like the teacher was up on a stage, and these students were trying to challenge this teacher about like the Israel and Palestine. I guess the students were Jewish, and they were trying to support the state of Israel, and this teacher was Jewish, but he was supporting Palestine, and these kids were crying, and it was like, oh, like all of this hatred, and like it needs to stop, and like why is people like going against Israel? And this guy was like, hey, my family was persecuted, so don't tell me with your crocodile tears about oppression when you don't know what these people went through. Like, I know what oppression is, and it doesn't matter where you're from. This, like, I'm against oppression, you know, because my family was persecuted. So dude's talking from experience. She's talking from emotion because she accepted these concepts into her heart. And that's another thing I gotta break it down. Like, when you believe something, I looked up the etymology of the word believe. It comes from this German word geliefen, which means to hold to one's heart. The word love has the same root. It's geliefen, to hold to one's heart. So believe and beloved come from, and love come from the same root word. Understand? So once you believe something, it's like you love it. People believe in God, they love it, you know? Like, you attack people's beliefs, it's like you attack their love, their heart, their identity. It becomes a part of who they are. You know what I mean? When you believe something, it becomes a part of your identity, you know? So that's why people take things so personally. But, you know, like, we have to be more scrutinizing in what we believe in, how we shape our identity. But that's also why I say it's a cultural thing, because this is things that we accepted into our way of life, and it shapes our identity, what the things we believe, that we've been taught to believe. You know? So, but this is trust. This is coming from sources that we trust. We've been groomed to believe these things. You understand? This is let me break it down even further. Like, trust. Nothing is possible without trust. Nothing becomes real without trust. You know what I'm saying? Socially speaking. So, when we trust something, I'll use 1 + 1 as an example. We trust 1 + 1 = 2. Our teacher told us that we trust the teacher We trust the school and the curriculum. Everybody's been taught that. So we trust everybody. And that built the foundation of mathematics. So now we could go out in a world and understand mathematics because we trust that 1 + 1 = 2. We build a foundation of that. We're able to, we go out in the world, driving cars, follow the rules, traffic, and we all trust that everybody's gonna follow the same rules. And we take it for granted after that. We just like, everybody does it. It's like an accepted constant, Like we take it for granted. We trade, we do economics. It's all based on trust. Like I'm getting all this from my homie Jim Rohn, so I'm not trying to be a biter. But yeah, like he said, confidence and trust is what makes the world go round. We can't trade, we can't exchange without trust. So none of these things would be real without trust. And then we take this trust for granted. So when we're given concepts like culture and religion and history, we take these things and we're shaped by them, by these understandings, by these lessons, by these stories. We're shaped by them. We trust them. And then we take it for granted because we never question it. We only question things we don't trust. And that's why I love kids, like my stepson's 12. This kid asks questions about everything, And I gotta keep reminding myself not to get angry about these questions, Like, he's coming from a place of curiosity. Some of these questions, I grew up, if I asked them, I would have got beat. You know what I mean? Like, because we have a society, a culture where things don't get questioned. If you question them, there's always this threat of violence. There's always this threat of just being alienated or being labeled a troublemaker or some shit. You know what I mean? So just stop questioning certain things, Like, okay, I don't like how that turned out. Not gonna do that again. You know what I mean? Whether it be at school, whether it be at church with preachers, or whether it be at the household. So, well, for example, like my stepson, he asked this question, like he was doing this project where they said make laws, like write down laws for a society if you were to make a society. And he asked this question. He's like, why do we make laws if people can break them anyways? And I had to think about it because it was an interesting question. It was an interesting question. And then I really sat there and thought about it for a few minutes, and then I was like, it's a culture. You put down laws, then you shape a culture, and then people know that this is right, this is wrong, this is acceptable, this is not acceptable. It's written. You know what I mean? Now everybody knows. We teach our kids this, and then we develop a culture of this is what's acceptable and this is what isn't. But and because he asked that question, I developed a better understanding. Because I never asked myself that question. I just took it as this is an obvious thing. Never, like, people just do it or they don't. And it is what it is. But I never asked that question. I never thought to ask that question. But he did. And it was a good question, But it's like we take these things for granted. Like, it's obvious to us. But, but why we follow the law? Because it's law enforcement, but also morality. It's right or wrong. But if there is no morality and there is no law enforcement and you're building a society, why would you write it down? Is that gonna stop anybody? No. But a culture where you start to establish rules of what's right and what's wrong, you perpetuate this mindset, this code, right? But it's only, but we wouldn't be able to have, there's so many discussions, very fascinating discussions we have because he asked questions, and I just have to think, I have to do my research so I can have the understanding to teach him. You know what I mean? But we don't have these conversations as adults because we're groomed not to ask questions. You know what I mean? But society's changing. There's a lot of different things, but we gotta have open-minded certainty. Like I was certain of what's right and what's wrong. I had the confidence to go into a conversation where I didn't know the answer right away, but I had to think about it. And I think that's where the open-minded certainty kicks in, where it's just like, yo, doing jewels, having conversations with mindful people. Like, this is how I'm able to build confidence instead of getting my ego cracked by a question that's like, instead of looking at it as challenging authority or being like, just do what I tell, just write it down or some shit. Like, nah, man, like, stop being so closed-minded in your certainty and try to be an authoritative figure, trying to keep your ego running the show. Like, yo, we could develop a better understanding if we actually communicate. It's coming from an innocent place, and that's what we gotta understand too, you know? It's like, we look at kids when they question or challenge certain things, we're not realizing where it's coming from. It's coming from an innocent place most of the time. And also, we're always looking at it as a challenge authority, but we're not coming from a place where it's just like, yo, they're trying to learn, they're trying to develop understanding, they're challenging the concept more than they're challenging you. And it should be challenged, you know? But we're just so fragile when it comes to shit like that. And we're developing a fragile society if we don't have conversations and let it get uncomfortable so we could grow. Growing is uncomfortable, you know. Growing isn't supposed to be comfortable. And we should be focused on growing. This is stages of development. And the way this society, Western culture, this was regression, you know, that shit was holding us back, holding development back because it was trying to keep certain people in control. But if we're trying to grow as human beings and develop and gain more understanding so we can have a better future for our kids, then we have to challenge things. We have to grow. We have to challenge what isn't working. You understand? So, yo, keep an open mind. Stay certain as far as being positive and having confidence in yourself. Trust that there is an answer, but be open to the possibility that that answer will change. And that it's not complete. Like, stop looking for an empirical answer or trusting just something just because you were told this. Realize, yo, where did this come from? This understanding, where did this come from? This idea, where did this come from? Who said this? Why don't you ask about that shit? I mean, my wife might not like this, yo, but she was saying this. We were just talking about like sex workers and shit, and because she did this feminist class, went to university and studied gender studies, right? So she was saying, I guess it was an anecdote that she heard about like how sex work was the first profession. I'm like, where's this? Who said that? And where was it? What culture? What society? I mean, but she didn't answer because she didn't ask. And how many people did ask? When they hear that, we just accept it as it's a fact because it's coming from a source that we trust, so we don't question it. You know what I mean? But where does it come from? Whose culture is that? And what do you mean by professional? Do you mean just for trade? Like I'm not saying it's not true, but like you can't just say something and have no evidence to back it up, and expect everybody accept it as the truth. You know? So I don't know. I'm willing to stick my neck out and say the shit to ask the question to have a better understanding. And if you do have the answer, there's another thing too. There's another discussion we had where it was the opposite, where it was like she said something, or it's not even opposite, but she said something. I questioned it. It was like about melanin, and she was saying like, yeah, like people buy melanin. I'm like, yo, melanin? What do you mean melanin? Like that's in skin. Like how are they gonna buy some shit that came from the skin, right? So we looked it up because I was like, yo, I don't want to just leave it as a statement and a disagreement. I want to have a better understanding. So I looked this shit up, and she was 100% right. You find this document about these scientists in like the 1800s that would put pour acid on a black person and melt down their skin and get that melanin that way. I'm just horrified by this shit. But this was like a scientific document that this should come from. And it's like, yo, I had no idea that's how they would do that shit, but this is what they've been doing. You know? But now I understand better. I have a better understanding. I didn't just accept what I was told or what I heard. And now I know better about this shit, you know? It's fucking horrific. But that's the shit that happens. That shit happens. But anyways, let's be more open-minded. And have those discussions and do the research, you know? Find a better understanding. That's what matters more than one person being right. It's finding the facts. Finding the truth, not just the facts. Trying to get a better understanding of the total story, a more holistic approach. But yeah, I got a lot more to say on certainty, but I think this is a pretty good start. Probably do a part 2, or maybe on another topic another time. But peace and love, y'all.